This is the Schnitt Show.
Well, here we go. Hour number 2 of the Schnitt Show. I'm Casey O'Day in for Todd, and I just hate it when I see this dude gravy training. Al Sharpton, man. I'm on the New York Post front page, and it says, "Rest in peace. Ahmaud Arbery's mom hails guilty verdict and son slain. Never thought the day would come." And I guess if you missed it, the jury came back and basically all in the case of 2 of the defendants, most of the murder charges stuck. And in the third defendant, who was said to have filmed it, a single murder charge plus several other side charges. So everybody got convicted of murder one way or another. And there's still the federal portion to come in February. But the picture they have there is, of course, Al Sharpton has inserted himself right there. How this guy continues to be seen in any way, shape, or form. You know, what I'm trying to think what people remember about Al Sharpton. How many people nowadays know everything this guy was doing during the Crown Heights riots back, when was that, 90, 91, something like that? I've said this a few times to people, and like, what do you mean? Because when they think of Al Sharpton, it's, the bullhorn, the tracksuit, but Freddie's Fashion Mart, that was actually after the Crown Heights thing. All right, so let me just, if you don't know this, let me just give you a couple-minute Crown Heights riot. Because, we live in a society right now where if you tweeted something when you're 13 and the mob wants you, the mob gets you. And how Al Sharpton doesn't pay his taxes, has had all of these controversies over the years. How this dude continues to be seen in any sort of prestige, or helpful for that matter, is beyond me. All right, so what kicked off everything is there were 2 kids. Was it 1 kid or 2 kids? Basically, there was a car that was driven by a Jewish man in Crown Heights. And I think it was part of a procession that was being led through there. So it's not like he ran lights or anything. There was police actually driving the procession. And sadly, the vehicle struck another vehicle, and then it veered onto the sidewalk where it struck and killed a 7-year-old boy. The boy was he was from Guyana. I want to say he had and his family had moved to New York. So, but what do you have? You have a Jewish man driving a car who was just struck and killed a 7-year-old black kid. Well, as you can imagine, everything started to blow up there, and it blew up with people then gathering in and around what was going on. There was looting that began shortly thereafter. Al Sharpton decided to get himself involved in this. A man by the name of Yankel Rosenbaum, who was a rabbinical student, who was from Australia actually, was descended upon by the mob, and they stabbed him to death while screaming, "Kill the Jew, get the Jews out." Sharpton led the march through Crown Heights to I don't know, some sort of Jewish center. I don't think it was a temple, but and by the time he got there, they had 400 protesters who were chanting all sorts of anti-Semitic stuff. And there's a very famous Sharpton quote from it, because he said, if the Jews want to get it on, this is when he's speaking to the crowd, he says, the Jews want to get it on, tell them to pin their yarmulkes back and come over to my house. No, you know what he did? He said that during the eulogy, or he said that during the service for the boy. That's what it was. He didn't say it there. He said it during the service. He went on to say, the world will tell us he was killed by accident. Yes, a social accident. An accident to allow an apartheid ambulance service in the middle of Crown Heights. And this went on and on and on. Now, at one point, Sharpton did say that his, quote, his language exceeded the tensions that were necessary. It was he never apologized for it. But this is the guy. This is the guy who essentially was at the forefront and really kind of made his name with that. at least from a national perspective. And it's because a lot of people were outraged with it. And then, so it was 91, August 91. And then the Freddy's Fashion Mart thing was a few years later. And again, lo and behold, what do you have? You have a black Pentecostal church which owned a retail property that asked a tenant who was Jewish, who operated a Fashion Mart there, to evict his longtime subtenant, which was a black-owned record store. Sharpton then led a protest in Harlem. This is the irony of it. It's a black Pentecostal church that has rented this space to this Jewish guy and is trying to get the Jewish guy to evict a black tenant for them. And Sharpton's sitting there in the middle of the street, and it's the bullhorn tracksuit picture you've probably seen, screaming that they're not going to let white interlopers. And then eventually it got so heated, one of the protesters entered the store with a gun and flammable liquid, shot customers, and then set the store on fire. The gunman then fatally shot himself, and 7 store employees died due to smoke inhalation. They also determined that somebody had shut the sprinkler spigot down so that the installed sprinklers couldn't put the fire out. Sharpton claimed that the perpetrator was an open critic of him and his nonviolent tactics, and that he did not bear any responsibility. And this is the guy that's there on the front page. I'm sorry, this stuff just irks me so much. 800-801-8999. The phone number here on Schnitt. All right, let me get into this. It's not all horrible news today, so that's good. Samsung has announced that they will build a $17 billion chip factory in Texas. Why is this significant? Well, one, we're having some chip issues. I don't know if you've noticed. But it also is the largest foreign investment ever made from a plant standpoint in the state of Texas, which is saying something because they got foreign automotive there. They got a ton of stuff there. So a $17 billion semiconductor factory in Taylor, Texas. And understand why Samsung's doing this, and I find it interesting. One of the things right now that a lot of people are realizing with supply chain issues and the shutdown and in a variety of different ways, manufacturing, electronics, appliances, automobiles, is when the spigot gets shut down of chips, because we don't have a chip manufacturer, a large-scale chip manufacturer in the United States. I don't know if you knew that. When that gets shut down, it pinches so many different things. And there was a lot of discussion that what we need here in the United States in a variety of different ways, medicine and a few other industries, is we need to be able to be somewhat self-sufficient on manufacturing chips. They're just too important to our lives and all the stuff we buy and our, everything we do all day. You're just interacting with these chips. So Samsung, realizing that, somebody could step forward and do this, I think that probably motivated them to want to do it. And good. I'm fine with that. Too often it seems like all of the foreign investment is on behalf of the U.S. into other countries. It's nice when some of it's back here. A statement from the office of Governor Greg Abbott says Samsung chose the Lone Star State due to its business-friendly climate. They will produce a new generation of mobile 5G high-performance computing and AI chips, which will include 2,000 high-tech jobs and some 6,500 construction jobs, obviously just on the build-out. Construction will start next year, and the factory should be up and running in 2024. And by the way, so it's $17 billion investment. Texas is like a lot of states where they have these enterprise funds, and sometimes you see these numbers where, they're like, if you invest $50 million, we'll give you $50 million. And they generally do it through tax breaks, abatements, all kinds of stuff. But in this case, the Texas Enterprise Fund only ponied up $27 million, which is really low when you consider it's a $17 billion investment by Samsung. So they're getting a lot of bang for that buck there. I'm not a big fan of these investment funds that these different states do, these enterprise funds, because you get into these bidding wars, and I think it's very unfair to established companies who never got tax abatements and currently build and expand and employ people there. But the reality is that that's what happens. A lot of states do this, and Texas definitely got a steal of a deal there. All right, 800-801-8999. Have you heard, there's a very good Jonathan Turley piece. Have you heard the latest Hunter Biden story? Yes, China's involved, but also slave labor's involved. I'll give you the details on that when we return here on Schnitt.
Schnitt Show. The Schnitt list is on SchnittShow.com.
All right, welcome back to Schnitt Show. This is a rather interesting article here, and I've seen this story that it's based upon in a couple places, but none of the standard ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. Fox did do some reporting on this. The author is Jonathan Turley, and this is on his Substack here. So, it involves China and Hunter Biden again. So basically, here's the story as it's understood. And it's important from a time frame standpoint. Basically, Hunter Biden may have actually been receiving payments from China, and not just China, several different countries, for consultancy fees or some equity investment stuff that he was doing up to and into Joe Biden's election. And remember, during the campaign, they were saying that they denied ownership or continued ownership of any foreign investments by any of the Bidens. So here's how it starts. Hunter Biden established a firm called Baha'i Harvest Equity Investment Fund Management. And this involved several Americans and Chinese partners, and then eventually some Canadian partners. They did this back in 2013. And what they were doing by doing that is they were attempting to garner a majority share of a Shanghai-based, or it was based in Shanghai, of a U.S.-based company to facilitate being able to transfer ownership, eventual buyout of the company from a company in America called Freeport-McMoRan to a Chinese company. And it was about it was in excess of a $2.5 billion deal. The reason the Chinese wanted it, and obviously this is a company in China, but like most big companies in China, the Chinese government has some interest, some control of it, is they were wanting to get ahead of the cobalt market. And this company, this American company, has a giant cobalt / copper. I can't remember what else they pull out of there, but cobalt's the reason we're here. Mine in Congo, in the Congo. It's called the Tenke Fungurume mine. And it is a human rights nightmare. Because as enforcement, or the people working for them, they actually employ the Congolese military. And as a result, the workers are virtually slaves. And if you don't comply, they'll burn your house down. And dissenters, if they get too loud, were killed. Amnesty International spokeswoman Sarah Jackson says the long history of excessive use of force and unlawful killings has gone on unabated over the course of this time. So this is Hunter Biden who's doing this deal and sits on the board. This is pointed out. I'm not sure he has any experience in the mining industry. But eventually, they were able to get the transfer done. And they did it by buying a bunch of mining shares from another company in Canada and bringing on some Canadian partners. That part's not that interesting. Here's where it gets interesting. So now China has 80% ownership. They control virtually all of the resources coming out of there. It continues to be a hellhole. There was payments that were continuing to be made to Hunter Biden up through this time frame where they said they didn't have any interest. But according to documents published by Fox News, Hunter Biden continued to hold a 10% stake in this. Up until April of 2021, after such time as they had previously said they had divested nearly a year earlier. All right, so I'm sitting there and telling you this because his dad's president, and there are a few things that have to happen from a regulatory standpoint for something this big from an American company to go to China. Now, why does China want it? Cobalt. Why is this a little disconcerting? Because the cobalt is key. It's instrumental in the electric cars market. Well, what has Joe Biden just made a huge investment priority? And if you read the infrastructure bill, there's money allocated in there for things, but you have to read the fine print. Like, I'll give you an example. There's a big chunk of money for quote unquote ports, right? Ports. That's a good thing to spend money on from investment, considering what's going on in the ports, right? However, the majority of the money has a string attached requiring that it be used for carbon reducing projects, not simply expansion projects, more cranes, more storage, any of that. They got to use it. Well, they got to use it in many cases to buy things that utilize these electric batteries, be it cars, construction equipment, you name it. So it's a really good investment as people start needing more of those batteries. And Hunter Biden facilitated that and was being paid even while his dad was president. And now this is a spending priority for Joe Biden. Do you see why people might have questions on this stuff? The appearance of impropriety and the very same stuff they would have nuked any one of the Trump kids for.
This is the Schnitt Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, we take pride in presenting Schnitt.
All right, back half, hour number 2. It is the Schnitt Show. I'm Casey O'Day, sitting in for Todd here on your Wednesday. Oh, man. Look at this. Defense officials announced new UFO task force. Right. I guess these would be different than the dudes at Area 51 who have all the stuff and reverse engineer it, right? Okay. Washington is stepping up efforts to probe possible alien activity after officials admitted they could not explain the phenomena of UFO sightings. The Department of Defense will roll out a new group tasked with finding and identifying UFOs in restricted airspace, according to officials. The new outfit comes after the intelligence community verified a series of unexplained aerial phenomena sightings by the military earlier this year, but said it could not identify the vehicles. Look, I know the UFO and the aliens and all that stuff gets that, but if you're the Defense Department and you got stuff moving at speeds and in ways that, frankly, it shouldn't be, and you have credible sightings of that, that's a huge problem for you. Unless you're the ones doing it. Because that means that, in all likelihood, that some other countries out there doing this stuff. And with what we've seen with these ballistic missiles, these hypersonic missiles out of China, and what Russia says they have from a tech standpoint, although nobody's really seen it, you can understand why people want to keep an eye on it. So we'll see. But in reality, anyone who's actually, really high up in this, I'm sure that's already happening all on its own, if you catch my drift. And they're not going to put a press release out on that stuff. All right. Despite the fact that the supply chain in the United States continues to be problematic, the Biden administration has announced that on January 22nd, they will now require non-resident truck drivers, as well as government and emergency response officials, to be fully vaccinated in order to cross the U.S. border. Let's talk about all the reasons this is dumb. Do you understand the volume of truck-based shipping that crosses in and out of the U.S. every day, both on the southern border and on the northern border? Tons and tons and tons. truck after truck after truck. There are truck drivers that live in Mexico. They're Mexican, nationals who every day their job is literally driving loads across the border. And then if you in some of these the various border areas, companies here have huge warehousing and storage areas. So they come across, they drop off the containers, they go back, and they may do it several times a day. Why would you want to impede that, considering they don't really even interact with people that much for those short hauls? In fact, in many instances, they're kind of restricted from doing it. It's a very specific entry-exit thing that they do. A senior administration official said the requirement, which the White House previewed in October, brings the rules for essential travel in line with those that took effect earlier this month for leisure travelers when the U.S. reopened its borders to fully vaccinated individuals. And you're right, it does bring it in line. However, those two groups are very different groups. And if you wanted to, there are ways that you could put restrictions on that wouldn't necessarily. I'm less concerned about Canada. I don't know what the vax rate up in Canada is, but in Mexico, no, it's not so good. And when people say, well, then, what you do is if that person doesn't work, find somebody else. It's not as simple as just sticking another dude in a truck. You have to, for their ability to go back and forth across the border, we have entry-exit requirements from Mexico that are pretty specific to this and would necessarily possibly require even some background and some time to fill those spots. So I don't know all of the logistics, but I do know that you're dealing with different types of travelers. And there might have been less restrictive ways to do this. Let's see. The Biden administration had originally scheduled the vaccine requirement for November 8th, but then pushed the deadline back. Narita Taylor, spokeswoman for the trucking group Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, slammed the decision, saying the Biden administration action showed how unnecessary government mandates can force experienced owner-operators and independent truckers out of the business. Because, there's also the part where, if you're crossing that border, there are U.S. drivers that go down there, pick stuff up, and come back. Or even drivers that take things from the United States and drive them down to Mexico. Canada has announced it'll require truck drivers, whether American or Canadian, to be double vaccinated by January 15th. So the Canadian thing will be, it'll force the hand of the U.S. on that side. But on the southern border, we're going to be the more restrictive one. And again, we have issues already. CTA, which said they estimate, and they say it's a conservative estimate, claims that 10 to 20% of Canadian truck drivers crossing the border and 40% of U.S. truck drivers traveling into Canada could quit over vaccine requirements. Quote, it is entirely unclear how the industry and supply chain can compensate for thousands of drivers abruptly exiting. Keep in mind that right now, they need truck drivers bad. It's crazy the number of truck drivers that they could hire right now just here in the U.S. And some of the incentives they're throwing at people. When I do my morning show, I did a topic about this, not this one, a couple weeks ago. And, truck drivers love some talk radio, and we love truck drivers. And so they were calling in, and they were just talking about some of the incentive stuff that their company or some of their buddies were hearing about. And it's bonkers, but it's what you have to do. If you need those drivers, man, you got to throw the cash over there because then you're making some money. Make no mistake, if this mandate moves forward as planned, it would bring significant consequences to the cross-border economy, which would be felt by the Canadian and American public. I have no doubt. And we're just going full speed ahead. Keep in mind, too, Fauci was saying last week, and I think he said it again earlier this week in an interview, that they're contemplating changing the legal definition of vaccinated or fully vaccinated to include booster shots. That's what they're looking at right now. So even people, like let's say you went out and you got the, you got your 2 shots or you got your 1 if you did the J&J. and you're like, all right, I'm all vaccinated for the purpose of, I don't know, travel requirements or other things where you needed to verify it, you might soon be unverified if you don't have that additional booster on there. Then it throws into even more turmoil. 800-801-8999. This might be, oh, geez, look at this. Oh, man, CBS, you're going to take the crown. You know, NBC made a stupid. All right, so NBC on Monday on their morning show, they had I think I've mentioned this both days this week, so why not do a third? They had a woman on there who was giving Thanksgiving tips to save money, and it's like, have people bring potluck stuff. Okay, all right, I guess that's reasonable. And a couple others, but it was the one at the end was the doozy. It's like, don't have a turkey. Her logic being, one, you know, save money on the turkey, and two, less people will show up because it'll be like, they don't have turkey? I'm out. So what you do is you get the turkey, and then you say you don't have the turkey. Boom, solved. Well, CBS has decided they had to get in on this insanity. During a segment on Thanksgiving to suggest families, they were talking initially about tension at the Thanksgiving table, but then they switched to safety. And during the segment, I kid you not, this woman suggests what families can do to feel safe is have everybody arrive at a certain time and serve drinks and hors d'oeuvres in a garage, a ventilated garage, so I guess with the garage door open, while everyone takes a rapid COVID test and then wait for the results before going inside. Quote, you can make it playful, make it fun, and then be able to enjoy your holiday. By the way, there's about 4 people sitting around this little stupid panel. I don't believe a single one of them is going to do that at their own household. But if you think families are going to gather there in the garage so they can do rapid COVID tests before entering the house, come on. That's just lunacy, man. All right, 45 after the hour. We'll hit a break. When we come back, here we go. When we come back, we're going to have to get into this. It's a Rolling Stone article, and they have a very interesting accusation that they have decided to include, going back to the January 6th trial and the organizers who just recently on Monday were found liable for $11 million in compensatory damages. And what they say may have been why they weren't able to close all of the conspiracy connections. And yes, it is an anonymous source. Absolutely. And Rolling Stone ran with it because they have such a good track record when it comes to anonymous sourcing. Just see the Virginia rape story. So we'll get into that next. Give you the details. It's Schnitz Show. Hang on.
The Schnitz Show.
Now you can listen to
Schnitz.
All right, hello and welcome. Happy Wednesday. Casey O'Day sitting in for Schnitz for another, hour, 10 minutes, something like that. Okay. All right. I'm sitting there and I was studying some of the reactions to the Ahmaud Arbery verdict. They seem reasonable. It seems to be genuine consensus. Nobody's visibly threatening each other on the Twitter. So looks like we may get one day with all of that. All right. Let me get into this story from Rolling Stone. More anonymous sources. They've had a couple big stories blow up in their face, obviously. I just don't think they care anymore. Some of the organizers who planned the rally that took place on the White House ellipse on January 6 allegedly used difficult-to-trace burner phones for their most high-level communications with former President Trump's team. I want you to understand what we're getting in here. Let me give you just the quick and dirty. What they are essentially alleging is that organizers of the rally were communicating with members of President Trump's team. that is probably true because the rally, which was not at the Capitol, it was at the White House. And if you've ever been to D.C. or you've seen a picture, they're not right next to each other. You got to walk all the way up there to the Capitol. The rally had the president speaking. So the idea that you would have people who were organizers of the rally in communication with President Trump's team members would almost have to happen. I don't know if you've ever put a rally together where you have a speaker, not necessarily the president, but if you're the organizer, if you organize an event and then you have somebody come to the event to speak, you have to communicate to each other. All right. So with that in mind, though, I want you to understand the direction, though, that Rolling Stone's going, and they are starting that direction on the false premise that is always utilized when it comes to January 6th, and it is that everybody who was at the rally at the White House was also banging through the doors and windows at the Capitol and committing crimes. And that is not remotely close. It was a very, 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 very small percentage that actually went over the Capitol and in the Capitol or participated in any way, shape, or form with any of the criminal activities alleged to have occurred there. Kyle Kremer, a top official in the March for Trump group that helped plan the rally, directed an aide to pick up 3 burner phones days before, according to 3 sources who were involved in the event. One of the sources, a member of the March for Trump team, says Kremer insisted the phones be purchased using cash and described it as being of the, quote, utmost importance. The anonymous sources say Kremer took one of the phones and used it to communicate with top White House and Trump campaign officials, including Eric Trump, who's the second oldest there. Laura Trump, Eric's wife, and a former senior Trump campaign consultant, Mark Meadows, the former White House chief of staff. He was actually a congressman up in North Carolina here. And Katrina Pearson, who was a campaign consultant. Sorry, I just keep getting pop-ups on Rolling Stone's site. The member says a second phone was given to Amy Kremer. That's Kyle Kremer's mother, who also helped organize the rally. And they did not say who the third phone was purchased for. Quote, that was when the planning for the event at the Ellipse was happening. She needed burner phones in order to communicate with high-level people, is how she put it. That according to an anonymous March for Trump team member who spoke to Rolling Stone. According to the sources, some of the most crucial planning conversations between top rally organizers and Trump's inner circle took place on those burner phones. They were planning all kinds of stuff, marches and rallies. Any conversation she had with the White House or Trump family took place on those phones. Now, again, I don't know whether they did purchase some or they didn't purchase some. You know, one of the problems you run into in Washington, D.C. when you have a huge gathering, and I don't know how this would solve it, when you have a huge gathering down there, is there are some capacity issues that you can hit on cellular towers. It's like you ever try to make a call inside of a sports venue when it's full? Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. The House Select Committee on the January 6th attack has been examining. By the way, I find it very interesting that they will happily refer to the January 6th attack as an attack. But I saw several news outlets today, including CBS News, who referred to what happened in Waukesha, Wisconsin, as a traffic crash. Really? Just a track? Because there was a traffic crash literally over on the corner by my house yesterday. Everyone looked like they were fine. Very low speed. So when I think traffic crash, that's what I think. I don't think what happened in Waukesha is fairly described as a traffic crash. But anyway, January 6th attack, I agree with that. There was an attack on January 6th by a very small percentage of the people that were up there. That being said, if you're one of these people beating police with a pole and dragging that guy on the ground, that body cam footage is hard to watch, and bury that guy under the prison. I got no problem with that. But Rolling Stone wrote this whole article alleging that the phones were used for some sort of malfeasance or any of the rest. And frankly, they only have anonymous sourcing that the phones were in fact even a thing. So, understand what's being alleged there, but also understand there's a whole lot of holes that Rolling Stone didn't see fit to fill in. We'll be back.
The Shit Show.